Good.
So last time we spoke, you had no update on Jamie Collins, and obviously there's a lot of experience there. But from what you saw of his film in his 2 games in Detroit this season, what made you want to work with him again?
Yeah. Well, Jamie has experience in our system, and feel like he gives us some depth at that spot. He can has some versatility. So we'll work through it here and see how it goes.
From what he's shown you, at least in practice yesterday and meetings since, do you think there's a chance he could play Sunday?
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I think that really depends really on how things go today, and and then we'll talk about the roster and all that after today's practice and tomorrow.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Next question, Chris Ryan, followed by Mike Reese.
Morning, Bill. How are you?
Hey, Chris.
Wanted to ask you a little bit at the quarterway point of the season about your receiving core, particularly the four free agent acquisitions. What have you seen from them, and have they impacted the game the way that you would have wanted so far?
Yeah, well, I'm glad we have all of them. I think they've all contributed, done a good job. Certainly, give us some depth and quality at that position. Along with Jacoby, it's good to get Nikhil back, and so that's those have all been positives. But I think that Hunter and Janu and KB and Nelly have all helped us, and they do different things, but they complement each other. And I think the more time we spend together, and more time they work with Mac, who's another new part of this, that'll continue to move in a positive direction as it has so far.
Generally speaking, each player is different, right? But is there a time period where you feel it takes for players to get acclimated with what you want them to do, particularly on the offensive side of the football?
Yeah, well, there's always a big benefit to experience in general, but more importantly, experience in a system and experience working with those players that you mentioned, whether it's the receivers and tight ends or whether it's the quarterback and the timing of routes and so forth. But there's different distributions and meshes and releases and things like that the receivers themselves are involved in, and then there's the timing with the quarterbacks, and then there's the overall offensive system. So I think that's continued to get better every week. We had a couple weeks in the preseason where we didn't have everybody available, and we had we're working Cam and Mac both at quarterback. But as things have stabilized here in the last few weeks, I think that's definitely trending in the right direction, and the productions generally followed that. And we still have a long way to go, but I think that's moving in the right direction. But again, offensively, it takes all 11 guys. It's not just about a quarterback and a receiver. And so, just overall offensively, our production execution, can move to a higher level as well. So that includes everybody.
Question, Mike Reese, followed by Bob Sousa.
Morning, Bill. I want to ask about the offensive line with 4 of the top 5 guys not practicing the last 2 days. What is your level of concern with that spot right now?
Well, again, I think today will help clear some of that up, and but whoever has the opportunity, I'm sure they'll make the most of it. And I know the guys that didn't practice are working as hard as they can to be ready to go, and the guys that did are likewise preparing. And if they get an opportunity, I think they'll be ready to go too. So we'll see how it all plays out. I don't know.
And then I just want to follow back on one thing. When we were talking on Wednesday, and you were asked a couple questions on Stephon, I think you mentioned something like, you've said all you can say right now. And then a little while after that, the trade was consummated. And I'm just wondering, now that the trade is done, to Carolina, was there something else that did you want to close that loop, or was there something else to say is maybe my question?
No, I have my comments on Steph. Nothing's changed there at all. Certainly, I was being questioned about the process of us parting ways and so forth, and it ended up the way it did. But I wouldn't have been able to say that at that point in time. And so, I didn't want to mislead anybody or say something and then, have to retract it or whatever. I know you want all the up to the second information, but sometimes things just aren't finished, at a particular point in time when I'm available or you ask the question. And so rather than give the wrong answer, I'd rather wait and, let things develop and, be accurate.
Next question, Bob Sisson, followed by Phil Perry.
Good morning, Bill.
Bob?
Bill, Matthew Slater had the hit the other night on the punt that jarred the ball loose, and that play, of course, was negated by penalty. But looking back over the start of this season and really a good chunk of last season, there haven't been many fumbles forced by your team. And I'm curious, I heard Nick Caserio actually in an interview. He was talking about the Texans-Bills game, and they had 3 fumbles by the Bills that Buffalo recovered. But he used the term tackling the football. I'm just curious, what the balance is there when you try to make plays on defense and you want to get the ball out, but yet at the same time you have to stay true to the fundamentals of tackling. And basically, how can you get more takeaways when it comes to fumbles?
Right. Well, that's it's a good question. I think that's a lengthy answer. I mean, first of all, if you look at the majority of the fumbles, there's a high percentage of them that come at the quarterback position. Some of those are in the act of throwing or in the pocket or that kind of thing. And so that's kind of, I would say, a whole different category. When you look at other fumbles by running backs or, tight ends and receivers, generally speaking, after they've caught the ball, they kind of fall into another category too. But to your point, there's a balance between just grabbing at the ball and missing tackles, and then so you get into situations like, like Damien's touchdown against the Jets. The Jets are a good ball disruption team, and they try to tackle the ball, and, Damien was able to get through a couple of those tackles and score. So, I think the 2 best cause fumble opportunities are to, as part of the tackle, try to put pressure on the ball, and or for the second or third player in to try to get the ball out, and then you have the situations where the runner can't see the tackler, so coming from behind or coming from the side, where the runner's really not looking, sometimes there's opportunities there. So I think our players are aware of it. I think there are a lot of good examples where they are trying to get it out. And, that some of that has to do with the either good or not so good ball security that the guys who have the ball are using. So, combination of all those things. But we want to try to force that out as much as we can. And I would say that some players are more vulnerable to having the ball dislodged from them than others are. But we want to try to attack all of them. You never know when somebody's going to, slip up a little bit and give you that opportunity.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Next question, Phil Perry, followed by Evan Lazar.
Hey, Bill, I had a question about yards after the catch. Offensively, is there a reliable way to try to generate more in that regard? Is it to you, is it a scheme situation? Is it just an individual player, breaking a tackle situation? I'm sure there are a few things that factor into it, but I just wondered how you view that portion of offense. Is it gravy? Are you expecting yards after catch in certain situations?
Yeah, well, I think any player that has the ball, there's a certain amount of yards, let's call it, that are going to be a result of the actual play. So how run is blocked, how deep the receiver catches the ball, whatever position the player plays, wherever the receiver catches the ball, is he 15 yards downfield, is he 3 yards downfield, like whatever it is. And then there's a certain amount of yards, I would say, that would go with that play based on the the position and the leverage of the players around them. And then I think the real question is how much does the player with the ball gain, let's call it on his own, from where he could have been tackled or should have been tackled, let's say, to what he actually gets on the play. So I think there's a lot of different ways to. It's a little bit subjective, but I think there's different ways to look at that. So if a runner gets hit and is able to drive forward for 3 extra yards versus getting driven back, then that's 3 extra yards that I'd say he gets on his own. Or player catches a pass and looks like he's in a situation where he either could or should be tackled, but he's able to avoid or break that tackle and gain extra yards beyond that, then those are yards on his own. I think if you just throw the ball at somebody and there's nobody within 10 yards of him and he runs 10 yards and gets tackled, that's a lot different than 10 yards of there's a guy right there to tackle him on a 30-yard line and he avoids him or breaks the tackle and gets to the 40. Like those 10 yards are a little bit, different in the way I think the way we look at that. So, sometimes the yards after catch come as part of the running or the skill of the player in the open field, but sometimes, the real tell of it is how much the player gains with the ball in his hands after somebody has a chance to tackle him.
And just this sort of gets back to Chris's question from earlier, but is that something that you think could be improved with Mac and your receivers just having more time together and maybe that connection developing where they're, those targets are maybe leading to more yards after catch because they're seeing things the same way?
Yeah, no, I think that we're not in a bad spot there. I think generally speaking, Mac puts the ball in a place where the receivers can run with it. I mean, if you're a receiver running a crossing pattern, a ball's thrown behind you where you have to turn around, stop, catch it. Well, that hurts your opportunity to run with the ball. If you catch the ball, in stride and are able to, maintain the momentum and the separation that you've created in the route, then that, enhances your run after catch opportunities. And that's really, a focus it's, relative to the accuracy and the placement of the ball by the quarterback more than really it would be by the ability of the runner at that point. Now, once the player gets the ball and is running with it, then it totally falls in the hand of the guy carrying the ball. So, again, I think there's a number of different ways you can look at that, but overall, I think Mac's been pretty accurate. That the receivers haven't had to work, excessively to just make the catch, and so he puts them in that position, and then it's really up to them to, gain yards. We work on those running drills every day, and I think there's a lot of good examples of players gaining extra yards based on good running skills. And then there are other examples where we could get a little more out of it sometimes. And so we talk about that, and I think the players understand that, and they've got to make quick decisions as to how's the best way to gain yards. We're all trying to gain yards, but there's definitely a skill to that, and we work on a regular basis. So hope that answers the question.
Last 2 questions will be Evan Lazar and Dakota Randall.
Hey, Coach, I wanted to ask you about taking a player off the practice squad and elevating them and then installing them into the game plan. And is that, would you say, a pretty big difference in a work week for a practice squad player? Thinking of maybe like Miles last week, for example, who is a big part of the game plan one week, but might be on the practice squad, in other situations.
Well, I think anybody that's been around the National Football League very long, and certainly around our team very long, knows that things can happen quickly. Things can happen from Wednesday to Thursday, from Friday to Saturday, sometimes from Saturday to Sunday. And that's the nature of the National Football League. Things change. And certainly we're in a situation now with, for example, COVID. But it could come up just on regular flu or upset stomach or a variety of things, an injury that, gets aggravated late in the week. So all of our practice squad players are instructed and coached to prepare every week like they're going to play. And I learned a long time ago that, being prepared and not getting the opportunity in the long run is still a very valuable exercise. And then when you do get the opportunity, those other times that you've prepared will just help you prepare better now during this time when you actually get it. So I think that's really the mindset that the practice squad players do work with and are told to work with. And the decision of whether they're active or not is not something they can control. That's out of their hands. What they can control is their preparation and their performance when they get a chance. And that's really what they should and hopefully do focus on. So that's really how we handle it. They should be prepared whether they get the opportunity or not the reverse of I'm not going to do anything and then I get the opportunity and now I'm going to all of a sudden try to put my foot on the gas and push it all the way down. That's just not a good way to, I would say, prepare to prepare.
And last question before we.
Hey, Bill. Jacoby Myers certainly isn't the first quarterback turned receiver that we've seen throw passes in this league, but Kendrick Bourne yesterday spoke really highly of how natural Jacoby is when called upon to pass. Is he especially good at that in your eyes? And, what do you look for in a player to feel comfortable in calling those kinds of plays?
Well, you look for a player who would make good decisions and is accurate. Former college quarterbacks are, guys who at least have some experience, of seeing if the receiver's covered or if he's open. It's not a one-time thing. They've done it before. So like Julian or Jacoby or, players like that played that position in college. You need for him to see if the receiver's open and not just, throw it there because that's where the dotted line on the page is put. And then if he's open, then to be able to put it on him and be accurate. So, players like, again, Kevin Falk and Julian and Jacoby and guys like that have those skills and those abilities are kind of the guys you want to throw the ball. You don't want to just throw it up there for grabs and turn a ball over. But if the play design works and the players are open, you want somebody that can put it on them.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Coach. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Of a year.
Opponents? I've gone up against thousands.
And there's an opponent we're all up against, COVID-19.
But there's a way to beat it. Get vaccinated.
So when it's your turn, roll up your sleeves.
And let's get to the finish line together.
When did Bud Light Seltzer start making lemonade?
Probably when 2020 handed us all those lemons.
New Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade, packed with lemonade flavor after a lemon of a year.
Opponents? I've gone up against thousands.
And there's an opponent we're all up against, COVID-19.
But there's a way to beat it. Get vaccinated.
So when it's your turn, roll up your sleeves.
And let's get to the finish line together.
When did Bud Light Seltzer start making lemonade?
Probably when 2020 handed us all those lemons.
New Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade, packed with lemonade flavor after a lemon of a year.
Opponents?